My name is Chris Gethin, and what I aim to bring to you is inspiration, motivation from clients, everything that will allow you to evolve as a human being. Hello, everybody. This is Chris Gethin, and welcome to another episode of the Chris Gethin podcast. I've got a phenomenal guest on here today. I think the last time that we got together and spoke was probably about maybe 5 years ago, maybe more, who knows. But anyway, I've been following this person and his career for many, many years, loving what he's doing in the industry. And he's certainly somebody who really thinks outside the box. I first came across Pejman, who is my guest here today, when he wrote and published the book, The Third Circle Theory, which I thought was absolutely phenomenal. And it's been on my bookshelf ever since, and I've read it a couple of times. And this gentleman is a self-made entrepreneur, philosopher, author, and a creator of the wealth transfer methodology. And over the past 20 years, Pejman has built a multitude of businesses, ranging from one-of-a-kind investment firms to focusing on alternative asset management, known as one-off investments, to a series of online educational businesses, including the secret Entourage, I'll get it right, which I'm very familiar with. And more recently, exotic car hacks and the watch trading academy, which I find is very fascinating as well. And these platforms have forced people to rethink their understanding of business, luxury assets, and money management. So Pejman Ghadimi, I think I've got that pronouncement correct. Welcome to the show, brother. It's really, really good to reconnect.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and call me PJ for the show. We'll make it easier for everybody,
PJ, okay, thank you. Make it easier for me. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we connected some years ago, and I'd read your book, Third Circle Theory. Was this the first book, and was this your first foray into entrepreneurship, meaning teaching others, not just yourself, but I mean teaching others about entrepreneurship and business accolade and think in a different way?
So believe it or not, it actually wasn't. Third Circle Theory was my, I think it was 11th book. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah, exactly. And I've been teaching online since 2008. Third Circle Theory came in 2013. So it was quite a couple of years after. But previous to that, I also had my own business since 2005. So, I've been in the entrepreneur game for a while. And I think that's one of the stories I like to share with people is that, you see someone for what makes them famous, but you don't see the years before that in which they acquire the knowledge, the practice, and the skills to become famous then, right? So I only say you're only as good as why and when people remember you by, So usually it's, something of meaning or impact to them that makes you remember people, right? And I think Third Circle Theory was my most impactful book because it addressed a much wider and broader range of people. And I think that that's why it was so impactful, because it helped, I think, a larger group of people. And over the years, I've also written its sequel, Radius, which is destined to be more for a lot less people than Third Circle Theory. And it's even trilogy ending on The Gate of Choice, which is even geared to less people. So, I write books for the sake of education. I don't write them for the sake of becoming famous. So my value proposition in books is not to make money or anything, but rather to just help move people through stages of evolution. And it's more of a passion than anything else. And while Third Circle Theory became an international bestseller, to me, it was more about just its messaging and what and how to move people through these transitions of life. So that's why we had launched Secret Entourage back then, and certainly continued to teach online, thinking outside the box and rethinking the way we see our reality in our life.
Yeah. And what I really liked about that book, I remember reading it because I'd read a lot of entrepreneurship, self-help sort of books, and this was very easy to apply. Now, there's certain chapters that you take out of certain books that you apply to your own book of life. And I found that there was several chapters that were very easy to apply. And I've used them to start various businesses, whether it be my supplement brand, whether it be the gym franchise that I have, or my online training presence. And I've got something that's called like a Be Harder to Kill course as well, where I help people with their resilience through the hardship that they go through in work. And I've taken a lot of that from you and your book. So thank you very much for that contribution. I just wanted to send that shout out there. Now, when you got into this space initially and obviously taught a lot of people along the way, what I found from you within your books is that you're very good at being very versatile. So there's several ways that you can create an income. Now, some people may not be able to excel at one thing, but collectively they can excel. And I think that you can excel at pretty much everything that you do, but collectively you've got quite a diverse things, such as assets, where people would usually see as a liability, but you've been able to kind of turn a 360 on that and show how certain assets can be an investment, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think this way. We live in a world, right? We can tie it all in together with third circle and everything else. So we live in a world where you're a consumer of everything and everyone, right? Like you're a consumer of a gym, right? Like you go in, you pay money to access a space where you can work out. And the same happens when you buy a car. You're a consumer of a dealership where you purchase that car, right? And if you purchase a watch, you're a consumer of one, the manufacturer of that watch, and two, you're a consumer of the cycles that are created to allow you to acquire that watch and do a transaction or a payment to acquire it. So one of the things that's really incredible about being able to see the world for what it is, and I teach people this a lot in Third Circle and through my books, is awareness and self-awareness, is that there's a mechanism that runs that as one, that mechanism has been created to enable us to transact. And a transaction typically has a fee, right? Like anytime you transact on something, someone is getting richer from that transaction. Even when you use your credit card, a company is making money off that transaction, even though they're not actually paying the good or doing anything for you. They're just facilitating a transaction, right? This is the essence of what business is in the world. Well, if we don't decode this transaction, we as human beings have become very blind to consumerism and to the ways we have looked at consumerism through ages. So we basically look at things and we go, we get rich to buy stuff. Like we get richer and we buy cars, watches, bigger homes, right? And we never really stop and analyze the transactions that take place through us acquiring things. So typically what we do is we go to a real estate agent and we say, buy me a home. We don't really stop and say, hey, well, how much money is that costing me? Because we go, well, the seller's paying it, so who cares? You know, it's not like when this guy sells me, I'm not the one paying it. But we're not decoding the way things work. Or we go to a dealership and we go, well, you know, I'm getting a good monthly payment, so I don't really care what the car costs or what they're making on it. That doesn't change me. But so what we've been accustomed to do as a society is basically become blinded to the transactions that we undertake every day. And so we've become a consumer of everything we do. And we typically believe other advocates of consumerism, such as, for example, when we look at healthy eating, you know, you're a healthy guy, you go to the gym every day, you eat healthy. We typically go, hey, maybe I'll come to you. And if you have a good suggestion for me on what to eat or what's healthy and not, I'll take that. But we don't investigate that further, right? We go, this isn't my area of expertise, and I'm just going to hear him out. He's saying this is the best alternate to meat. I'm going to eat that, you know, and again, one of the things we don't realize is that we're only as good as the information that's available for us to use. And those we listen to are only as good as their information set too, right? So if I learn something, I'm only as good as the information I have. And the more I'm in the industry, the more I share relevant, up-to-date information about the topic. And let's say I retired today and I was an expert in cars and watches. Well, I certainly would have outdated information if I didn't participate in the trade any further, right? This makes it very hard to learn stock trading from people who had success 20 years ago, but not in the last 30 days. It makes it very hard to take fitness tips from guys who were expert Olympians 20 years ago, but not today, you know, and are not doing anything with nutrition today because food was different then as it is now. And these things are different. So consumerism has basically blinded the world into not understanding the transactions that take place. That was point one. Point two is that a lot of the things we want to get richer for, like cars, watches, homes, and luxury items, have even a larger piece of consumerism built into them. Because you have, one, items of very high dollar transaction with very high margins and transaction costs. And in addition to that, you also have a society that has made you believe or understand certain things and accept certain rules and laws that apply certain ways, such as a lease is a smarter way to own a car. This is what we are taught by even like schools. You know, you lease so you can get a tax write-off. and it's better because your monthly payment, and then your teacher told you shouldn't spend more than 10% of your income. So like you have all of these things that have basically brainwashed you into believing that a transaction takes place a certain way. And then through that information, you've then accepted that you're a consumer of that transaction and that this is how it's supposed to take place. So when I was younger, I wasn't as rich as I am now. So I wanted to have really nice stuff. I wanted to have cars, watches, and I had a normal job making 60K a year, right? And I couldn't get these things. So instead of saying, well, I have to work 20 years of my life to get them and save up money and think like a consumer and a conventional thinker, I started saying, well, if a dealership can make money on an exotic car, what is it that they know that I don't know? And if a jeweler can make money on an exotic, nice luxury timepiece, what is it that they know that I don't know? So I started dissecting these models. And in dissecting these models, I basically made myself a guinea pig of buying things that I at the time couldn't afford by the definition of what society would have deemed a good, responsible choice financially, and turn these experiments into how can I afford these things and not let it be a financial burden. And so this was me from 1999 to basically 2005, working in finance and kind of seeing these things and coupling my knowledge of banks, financial kind of transactions into the luxury world. And in 2005, I basically founded an investment firm that enabled people to make investments into cars and watches with me. And basically, I decoded the entire algorithm of the luxury industries that exist in our world, how they get paid, and more importantly, how normal people can participate without losing any money. And I did this over the last 10 years from 2005, 2015. And then I decided, you know what, maybe it's time for me not to manage people's funds anymore and rather teach this online and teach people how to read these algorithms themselves so that they can find that, one, they can afford a car probably 10 times better than they ever thought possible. Two, they don't have to lose any money doing it. And three, they can also leverage luxuries like timepieces, handbags, or things like that to actually make money instead of lose money. So I have this quote, I know it's funny, but I said, most people get rich to buy shit. We get richer buying shit. So completely different dynamic in how we think about it. But that's how I basically look at my entire life now. And it's incredible because as you grow up in life and make a ton of money, like I'm sure you through the last 10 years have financially become much more wealthy than you were 10 years ago. That's the natural state of evolution humans should go through. You get to a place where you go, well, if I have no expenses because I am rich and I'm not buying shit because everything basically makes me money, then do I really need to be making $30 million a year? Does it change anything? And it's like, well, yeah, but you have nothing to buy. Like your boat's free, your cars are free, your watches are free, your house is free. So what do you need all that money for? So you can actually spend it on things that are relevant, philanthropy, your family, taking care of those you care for, and not so much look at luxuries and consumerism as a way to basically get distracted and lose a ton of money. So I know a lot to unpack there, and I'm sorry I just gave you the whole 411 at once.
No, I love that. That's absolutely awesome because, when you said it in that way, you're getting all these things like your watch, your handbag, your car, everything for free. Then you can spend your money on what is purpose driven, what you feel that you're actually getting something back for, not obviously just a financial gain, but just a feel good factor. Now, while we can't imagine drinking coffee loaded with toxic chemicals, we unknowingly use skincare products that could be having a negative effect on our health as well. So things such as parabens, phthalates, silicone, carcinogens can disrupt our endocrine system and have been known to cause various forms of cancer. So it's a murky world to navigate as it is. So why add skincare products to the list that can cause you harm? So make sure that you are checking each and every label to ensure that the words non-toxic are written all over it. And that's definitely what you're going to find with visual chemistry skin labels. And their skincare products are gluten-free, cruelty-free, all vegan, paraben-free, sulfate-free, silicone-free, talc-free, carcinogen-free, and they're eco-friendly. And I've been using this line for many, many years, and I often get I get compliments to say that I look a lot younger than 47 years old. So I'm going to continue to use them. So your skin deserves the best, and shop for the products that I use by looking for the G stack on the Visual Chemistry Skin website. So that's exactly what I use every single day. The mask I'll use on a weekly basis, but everything else I use every day. So use the code GETHIN20, that's GETHIN 20, to save 20%. Now, one thing I thought is fascinating, that you said, and I've heard this said before by you, where you don't tell people what to do, you actually teach them. You give them an understanding on purchasing a car and how they'd go about it. So let's say we've got a scenario. We've got somebody who, such as myself, drive a Jeep, but I want to get into the luxury cars. For the first step, let's say if I'm punching out a couple of $100,000, is it initially you have to come up with the down payment or the full payment for that car? How should somebody be thinking about that first transaction in order to get future transactions?
So the first thing you want to think about is the reason why you've been programmed to think like you think, to go to a dealership to make a purchase of a car. That's the first step. And it's to say, how can I decode my brain into thinking the way I'm conventionally thinking, which is I walk in a dealership locally, I get the best deal possible, I walk out feeling happy, only to be disappointed at the time of selling the car to realize I've made a bad choice. So how do we decode that? The question becomes, why are we walking in the dealership to begin with? Convenience, right? It's local. I can just walk in. Trust, because I trust that I'm going to get a car in good faith and someone's not going to screw me. And three, financing. Usually we think of the places we go to buy cars as a place we can finance cars. And 80% plus of the population finances their cars. Even if they have the means, they choose to. So what we've basically been conditioned to do is buy into an institution, which is a dealership, as a means of becoming and staying lazy and not doing our own work. If we define all of these transactions separately, then we can save not only a tremendous amount of money, but really decode how the transaction takes place. So the first step into buying an exotic or any type of car is to understand what you can qualify for. And so people do it all wrong because they simply go and say, I'm going to first find the car and then find the logistics. I'm saying figure out the logistics first so you don't fall victim to becoming someone else's transaction. So how do you do that? One, you have to basically get pre-qualified for what can you actually buy. So in my exotic car hacks course, I break down exactly how to get approved for the most possible. But for the sake of argument today, because we don't have 3 hours to teach that, we're going to basically say, okay, let's say you have a salary of $100,000 a year. It's a normal salary in your job. You should qualify for roughly about the same in exotic car purchasing, assuming you have a 650 credit score or better. So if you have a 100K salary, you should be able to afford a $100,000 finance purchase. Anything above that is what you want to put down, right? So meaning like if you want to put 20K down, you can basically look for a car that's 110, maybe with taxes 120, right? Now you're basically looking at 120K car. So the first step is to know what can you afford to buy? Because the one way people confuse themselves is they basically look for 100 things they can't afford. And then basically based on not being able to afford them later, they settle on the one thing they shouldn't have bought. So instead, when you go into a situation knowing what you can afford, you actually are looking at things that are relevant. You're not shopping $10 million homes when your budget is 1 million, right? In homes, I don't know why most people don't learn this from real estate. When you go buy a home, you have to pre-qualify yourself. Like you get a mortgage first, not after you find a home. And you go, I can afford a $3 million house. Okay, well, let's go shop for $3 million houses, And usually when you say, I'm going to stretch a little bit, you don't go, I'm going to go from 3 to 10 million. You go like, I'm going to go from 3, maybe 3.1. I can add 100K. We can make something happen, But like people don't think that way when everything else, they basically throw that out the window and they go, okay, when I'm buying a car, it doesn't matter. I just find something I like and I'll buy it. So you have to do that first. You have to pre-qualify your money because your money is going to drive your decisions, right? Because this is a smart financial decision, not a I want a car decision. So the first decision, know what you can buy. The second decision is to do the research. So we take that away from the dealership and trusting the salesman into doing the research for us. And we go online. Now, if you have a platform like Exotic Car Hacks, again, we have it there for you. But if you don't, you have this wonderful tool called the internet. You can research cars that you want. You can look on platforms like Auto Trader, Car Gurus, and kind of get a gist for basically what's on the market in my price range. What kind of cars can I afford? The next step, actually go and drive that car. A lot of people don't, they're like, who would let me test drive a car? Every dealership in the country would let you do that. You just have to, again, you have an approval in hand, you know what you can qualify for. You're going in, trying out a product, not a problem. Find it, drive it. Okay, so now you know what you want, you know you can afford it. Now comes the decision to make it a good financial decision. So now you have to learn the ins and outs of how dealers make money on that transaction. A dealership makes about 15% on a car, and there's steps to understanding how that's calculated, but let's assume that to be just a round number in general. And the next phase is, how do we take that 15% away from them as consumers while making it a win-win for them to lose that margin? You see, most people think, well, why would someone want to be in business if they're not making any money, right? Like, so the first step is usually we question our own reality. We go, I wouldn't want to work if I didn't make any money. But you see, in the luxury business, there is something called leverage. And that leverage is basically the cost basis of money tied into something that it isn't making you any money. And that means that if a dealer has a car for $200,000 and that car is not moving or has not moved for a while, then that money is basically sitting duck for the dealer. It isn't a good idea for them to retain that money. So the usage of that money into another asset will allow them to make more money. Their job isn't to collect cars, it's to sell cars. So to give you an example, it would be much better for them if they were to sell you a car at a loss and instead use the money and recycle it into a car they could win from, rather than just hold the car until someone pays for it when it's unlikely. So your job is to then identify these cars that qualify, match one of these cars with one of the cars you can actually afford to own, and be able to now buy by basically not paying the margin to the dealer and drive that for 12 months. So you see, like, it's a complicated process financially. It's not like as easy as saying, I just buy a car and that's it. But the point is, that's why we have a platform to actually teach people how we can simplify that for you by giving you all these formulas and algorithms so you can figure it out. And the best part about the system is that while you may, in a conventional way, buy an, let's say, Audi R8 exotic car from a Jeep, and you enjoy it and you say, oh, well, that's great. In a conventional way, you might then struggle with selling the car, or you might struggle with, getting rid of the car later because you'd have to take a heavy loss on it. But in our way, even if in 6 months you choose to get another car, you could actually break even or make money on the car and go to your next car. So you're never really marrying cars. You're just basically dating them, right? You're dating them until you find one you really like, and then you build a collection off of that if you choose to or not. My car collection now still makes me money with me doing nothing because the cars keep going up in value. But when I started and didn't have the resources to, one, store 15 cars, and then two, also have the financials to back up $10 million in cars, I would go ahead and do this one car at a time, 2 cars at a time. I had a daily driver, I had an exotic, and I just kept it going that way. And the point is just to understand that it starts with you and taking away that lazy part of assuming other people, like a dealership, will basically do all the work for you, and that still will put you in a positive position to make money off of their transaction.
Great answer. Now, would you suggest, as you mentioned, you could drive this car for like 6 months, 12 months? Do you usually, within your course, dependent on the car that person has purchased, to recycle maybe every year? Or is it something that they could possibly hold on to, like your cars that are ever increasing in value?
So it depends on what you buy, and it depends on your budget. On the lower end of the spectrum, when you're buying 50K to, this works on cars as low as 20K all the way up to 10 million, But let's say, for example, you're buying cars in the 20 to 80K range. It's going to be hard to collect those cars. They're hardly collectible in nature, So part of the reason we said this is exotic car hacks, not just any car hacks. People have asked me, can I use this on any car? The short answer of it is yes, you can use the system on any car to save money and certainly get you ahead of the game when buying even a Lexus, right? Or a base Mercedes. But the point of exotic car hacks is that exotic cars specifically have a very unique algorithm of depreciation that differs from all other mass-produced luxury cars. And they have a very different demand-supply spectrum that allows you to play them like stocks. So it's a very different dynamic than buying a regular Mercedes at your local dealership and saying, I've used the exotic car hacks tool to save myself 10K. That's okay, you can do that. And certainly I welcome people wanting to learn about the industry and getting in. But the point of this is that this is a more precise equation focused on exotic cars with badges like Ferrari, Maserati, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, Bentley, and not so much like a base Mercedes. Some Mercedes like AMG cars, BMWs, etc. But these cars require us to basically reassess the market each and every year, to answer your question. So, and these indicators are clearer for exotic cars, allowing us to make better, easier decisions than just the volatility and differences that exist in the regular car market, which are just your base Mercedes and BMW cars that people may enjoy to drive or previously lease, right? Thinking it's a good idea. But that in itself is the danger itself, because leasing is like the worst financial decision you can make if you actually break down what a lease is.
Right, got it. And one thing, there's a lot of the people out there listening to this show or watching it on YouTube that are within the fitness industry. There's a lot of fitness influencers out there. And some of my good friends, such as Jay Cutler, Mike Rashid, and Wes Watson, have really found that, their enjoyment in luxury cars, but using this as an investment for their future. Wes Watson said to me, because he's got, I think he's got 2 Rolls Royce, 2 Lamborghinis, he's got a Urus Lamborghini. I think he has a Huracan. I think that's the other one. And he said he basically is a reflection of what people want to see in themselves. So he uses it as a business transaction as well. If he puts it out there, people look up to him, that he's got a little bit more authenticity, more authority, and people tend to gravitate towards and ask him, how do I be an entrepreneur? How do I be like you, ripped, shredded, nice car, etc.? Do you think that is definitely the relevance right now, specifically in a visual fitness industry, that you have these influencers, that they have something like a luxury car within a lot of the images that they have to help them with their transactions?
I mean, it really depends. Listen, authenticity is a question that each individual has to answer as an individual, what's important to them and the people that follow them or their friends, right? It's true to say that society as a whole perceives success through the lens of money. So even when I was in banking and I wasn't that wealthy, I drove a Lamborghini back then, and I would tell people were like, I'd rather do business with you because obviously you're finding success on your own. So it makes sense for me to invest my money with you, right? Because you already know how to invest your own money. Most of my bankers aren't that successful. So why should I trust them with my money, right? So people typically gravitate towards individuals who figured it out more than people who are still living within their means or their capacity, and their capacity being limited if they don't have the things they want. For me, the way I look at exotic cars in the sense of marketing or in the business write-off or the business opportunity is that you have the opportunity to basically drive an incredible piece of machinery that was made by someone who cared to be the best at their take. Like when someone builds a Ferrari or Lamborghini, they're not building it because they want to make a comfortable ride from A to Z for someone that goes at their job that they hate. They're building it to win races. They're building it for an experience, right? And if I can be the human being that gets to experience the world's greatest race car driver's creation, or the team that engineered a car after 50 years of trying to perfect it, right? And I get to experience that on my drive on the weekends or when I'm enjoying time with my family in the car. I'd rather experience that than a Honda. I don't care what it costs. Now, if I can do that and it can cost me even less or make me money, then why would I ever want to drive a Honda, right? Like it makes so much more. Like, for example, I'll give you, I'm expecting a child soon. And, one of the things that's really important is most people, when they expect a child, they downsize their cars, they get a bigger car, they get a minivan, whatever it is, to make their lives, their lives easier for the child. Well, I went and bought an additional Bentley SUV just because it was a little bit lower to make the child seat easy. But it made more sense financially to buy that than buy a minivan. And I would argue that the only difference between me buying that and someone else buying a minivan is the information, the knowledge I have on why that makes more financial sense, because again, if they knew what I knew, they would never buy a minivan. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you're thinking about image in the sense of like, how much does it help your image? Well, there's a couple of things that happen when you own an exotic car. First, people naturally gravitate towards you. That happens. Secondly, there's an opportunity to really create an icebreaker there without even saying a word. It's like, hey, you're at the gym, You have your exotic, someone comes out, they're like, what do you do? How did you get here? What is it? And if you truly are authentic in your teaching and you want them to learn, then it's a great icebreaker. It's no different than having a six-pack as a trainer, right? You don't go to people that are incredibly obese and go, I want you to train me to be successful in my body and my nutrition when you haven't figured it out. And I think that's a big piece of it. And I think fitness is about commitment and determination and seeing true to what you want your body to look like and what you want your mind to be. And I think it's the same way with wealth, right? Like, so people gravitate towards that. But two, I think there's also an incredible proponent that if you can leverage it for your business and make it continue to not only bring you more business, network with incredible people as a result of it, it's helpful because, a lot of times they say you walk in somewhere, okay, people see you pull up in a Lamborghini and they take you more seriously. And other times, there are times where you're wearing a $500,000 watch and people take you very seriously for that if they know watches, and they're not asking you, can you prove that you can afford this conversation? Should we be talking to you about this? So there's definitely a business component that's real, but I think authenticity about if you should or shouldn't own a Lamborghini for your business comes more from the personal side of what your business is about, and that's important. The financial side, guaranteed it helps. So if you're smart and you know how to leverage the stuff I'm talking about, you're going to not only make money, but you're going to have a better experience and it's going to make you money rather than lose money. So how or why someone would think that owning a base Lexus makes more sense than a Ferrari? Well, at that point, it's a question of vanity because you're already driving something that gets attention, right? Like you already care about your status, so you're driving a Lexus, right? So like you care enough to drive a Lexus. So like, why wouldn't you want to drive a Bentley instead of the Lexus if it's going to make you money to drive the Bentley versus the Lexus? Like that doesn't, at that point, you're just scared to undertake and learn the process,
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you mentioned about, the image of having a car being an icebreaker, it took me back to a conversation that I had a friend of mine, Elliot, here in Boise. He's a very successful real estate agent now. He came over here on a scholarship to play with Boise State. And then he worked for Mercedes here in Boise. And then when he got into the real estate business, he got himself a Porsche GT, and then he got an Audi R8, and he found that, and he's grown really, really quickly here, really, really quickly in Boise. And he says by pulling up outside a house to meet potential clients, when you're in a Porsche GT or if you're in an Audi R8, it really does help with that transaction. People are taking you seriously, thinking, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm going to listen. And one thing I wanted to ask specifically, again, for people within the industry that is using their image as part of their job, if they were to purchase one of these luxury cars, how much could they write off towards their business?
So a lot, actually, because, there's various ways to do it. I mean, some of your businesses are related to success and things like that. You could write it off under that and get full bonus depreciation. In other cases, we also teach you in our course the baseline for being able to, for example, most people don't know, they know that they can write off trucks and heavy equipment, under their business, under what we call Section 179. But most of them say, well, I don't need a truck and I don't need a work truck, because I'm not in that business. If I'm in the fitness industry, I probably don't need a work truck to go anywhere. But what happens is they don't know that Bentleys, Rolls Royces, even the Urus Lamborghini is considered a work truck based on weight. So we teach you these loopholes as well, where you could actually write off a Rolls Royce SUV or Rolls Royce even car, and it would work in the founding of the weight of the car that would allow it to be written off as a truck. And you couldn't, even if you were audited, it would still be legally okay because of the weight. So a lot of people just don't understand the industry. And again, this goes back to the brainwashing. Your typical accountant will tell you, well, it's not a truck, and it's like, well, that's not, the IRS code is updated every 3 months, basically. And people have to adapt to what's new, like there's loopholes there for a reason. Like there's a reason people don't pay taxes because they learn how to read the code, and a lot of times we've done the work for you, so you don't have to, but in general, there's a lot of tricks and real legal and ethical ways to write off stuff based on what's allowed.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That's interesting because I come from a family of farmers. So, of course, they had trucks and they write off
Right.
their tractors, their trucks, and stuff like that. And I do love luxury cars. But being here in Boise, Idaho, I'm like, I don't know if this type of car would work well on these types of roads. So, I was looking at a couple of things like the new Escalade, or I was looking at the Rolls Royce Cullinan. Absolutely love that vehicle. I went in Wes Watson's Rolls Royce probably a couple of months ago. Absolutely loved it. The wife loved it. So being those that are trucks, those are heaviers, that's very interesting that that could be a possible 100% write-off towards a business.
100%. And you actually, I mean, imagine buying a $500,000 truck and getting a 35% write-off. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that's the crazy savings, right? On all in year one, that's like insane. You're basically saving like 170,000 in taxes, like 200 grand. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that like people look at and think that's cool. And then they go, well, it's probably illegal. It's probably not going to work. Like they're probably going to realize Rolls Royce, but there are legal loopholes within the system itself that tell you why this is actually possible and legal. You should talk to an accountant, but also you shouldn't take a no from your accountant just because they're uncomfortable with something they don't know. And a lot of times people, again, fall victim, what I said earlier, to the institution, conventional thinking. My accountant knows best. No accountant will tell me something different. Therefore, I should just accept the way things are. And when we do that, we're basically slaves to the system, a system that's been created to keep us within it. And listen, there's nothing wrong with the system, but it was built to allow us to master it so we can evolve past it, not stay stuck in it. And a lot of people just enjoy that idea of being lazy towards it. But if you do the work, if you follow the models and learn, you typically get out of the system much faster.
Yeah. And I've seen that a lot of people, judging by the testimonials that you've got from people that are investing in the exotic car hack course, you're helping a lot of people there. I got a question just out of curiosity. Over the past couple of years, or maybe year and a half, we've seen an increase in prices of cars, luxury cars, especially, considering the shortage and the supply chain issues. Does the exotic car hacks have the same relevance considering the climate and environments that we've been pressured by over the past year or so?
So even more than before, because now you have inflation basically helping keep values even higher. And on top of that, we also do all the studies of recessions versus inflation and how these things play out, and advise our students on which cars are safe, which are not. We have lists of cars in there for people so they're not buying the wrong cars. In 2020, the entire world was screaming recession because of the COVID lockdowns. I was screaming buy cars. People said, wait, why? This is stupid. It's going to crash. That's what it always does. In 2008, it crashed. That's how it works. Lockdowns means everything's on fire sale. I said buy cars. And they were like, no, it's stupid. I went and bought millions of dollars in cars right before the lockdowns. And right after lockdown, like a month later, I made 30-40% of my money because everybody was trying to buy cars and nobody had cars. So again, the point that people don't realize is that there's a system and it's not a generic system. And I think, the average person thinks, even when I speak, they're probably thinking in their head, buy low, sell high. Like, that's obvious. I get it too. But it's not that. If it was that, it would be, everybody would be doing it, right? There's a system in place that allows you to use a car for 12 full months, add miles, and still sell it for the same, if not more, than you paid. If it worked on every car, the entire amount of people watching this right now would be saying, well, we all know cars are investment, but they don't. Cars have been looked at as liabilities, as you said earlier, for years, right? And that's how people perceive them. So it's very, very dangerous to think of cars as, liabilities or assets without actually learning what makes the difference between a liability and an asset. So I think that it's very, very important that people realize this and realize that not all cars are created equal, and not all types of application of these cars is going to lead to equal results. So there is some studying to do and there is some learning to do, but right now, with the way the recession is incoming and the way inflation is still taking its place, it has created an even better environment to hack cars. Now, I can tell you over the last 2 years, a lot of our students, because we have like almost 20,000 students now, have made a lot of money on cars because of what happened in the environment. And we don't teach necessarily how to flip cars. There's a component in there that teaches people that want to just flip and not really drive the cars, you know how to do that. But the main point and the main concept here is to own an exotic, drive it for 12 months, enjoy it, let it become part of your business, part of your life, part of your experience. And then once you're ready to upgrade or get out, make sure you didn't make a bad financial decision. You know, and that's a very different component than saying buy low, sell high, and make some money, because that's not what we teach. You know, a lot of times people get confused and they go, "I was going to teach me how to flip cars." I don't teach people to flip cars. I teach people how to use assets and get richer buying the things they've always gotten rich to buy, so they don't have to lose their money and basically be broke again to repeat it again and again.
Okay, awesome. Now, I just want to touch quickly on your watch trading academy. I find this personally fascinating. I'm not a huge watch person myself. However, a couple of my friends and business partners are. A friend of mine, a business partner, Jag Chima, he's been buying and selling watches for a little while now. And he just told me literally about a week ago that now is a great time to be looking for Rolex watches. Maybe there's a couple of other brands I'm not aware of, because the prices are possibly starting to go down a little bit on the used watch market. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. So the watch market has been on fire since the 1990s. And people have only noticed because the fire has gotten out of control over the last 2 years. I mean, this watch is 100,000 new. It is 500,000 used. That should give you the idea that like someone would have to pay $500,000 for an item that was 100,000. A lot of that can be attributed to printing money and the cost of wealth. Basically, the cost of being rich has gone up, you know, and being in an A class versus B class has a higher price tag now on it, you know. So I think that's part of it. But the other part is also that the watch industry is not like completely bulletproof to the entire environment we're in, right? Market sell-offs in stocks and crypto crashes have created a huge amount of money being wiped off the planet. And that money being wiped off means that people have a need to sell at certain times, right? Now, historically, because I was around in 2008 doing this, watches have been a great counter to recessions because people need to park their money somewhere outside of banks. Have no other investments to make because everything's risky. And they basically buy luxury watches, which we're in the moment right before that. So there's definitely opportunities for future value gains. But right now, one of the great opportunities is that the sell-off has created really good price value in being able to play again, where things have become slightly affordable and allowing people to just get back in the game. Now, the game can start with as little as $1,000. But it can go up to, like I said, depending on your budget, up to $1 million for watches. The majority of people who buy luxury watches basically buy $5,000 to $30,000 watches, you know, $5,000 to 30,000. And as you get up and start building collections, you start buying six-figure watches, et cetera. But again, you know, it's scary to spend six figures on a watch, right? You're like sitting there like, well, I could buy a Lamborghini for six figures. Why do I want to watch, you know? But like the progression in life, you know, sometimes when you're making $100,000, you're not thinking about a $3 million yacht, right? And when when you don't have a $3 million yacht, you're not thinking about a $10 million yacht, you know, like, so, you know, everything in life has progression. And I think as people progress from cars to multiple cars to eventually their families taken care of, they look for other luxuries. And actually, I'll tell you something, a watch makes a much higher statement than a car. So because you have to have cash to buy a watch, you know, it's not something you basically bought with credit or finance. And it's something that says a lot because you can't take your car in a meeting with you, right? But you can take your $500,000 watch and make a statement when someone's asking you want to participate in something. They don't have to second guess you every second, you know?
Yeah, that same friend that I mentioned, Jag, he was telling me about a conversation that he had with somebody on a plane, and he was kind of trying to ignore him. He didn't want to get into a conversation. Then he clocked his watch, pardon the pun. And then all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to get into a conversation with this guy. You know, it kind
Right,
of,
and it makes a difference. Listen, it's a statement of status, right? I think, why do women wear $20,000 handbags over $500 one? I'm sure it does the same thing. They're both leather. It's not like one's bulletproof or not. You know, like it holds your purse and your stuff just the same, and they probably fashionably just as pretty. But one says, I have it and you don't. You know, and I think society has basically been very brainwashed into this ideology that we want to stand out, right? Status makes a difference in the world, and that we like it or not, people can disagree with me that, oh, it's not about what you have. And I agree with that. I think the human that you become is more relevant than what you have. But if the human you're becoming is that much of a higher human, then it's already mastered this sense of society of making money. And at some point, that status means you're enjoying better experiences than other people. Obviously, some people go to better hotels than others when they go on vacation, right? And some people wear better watches than others. It's all a point to basically just share status. And I think when people realize that, they realize that there's two types of people in the world: the people that will just chase status and as a result go broke doing it, the fake it till you make it guys, and that are struggling to get out there, or the guys that understand that status is a byproduct of who you are. And as you get up the ladder of the world, or whatever you want to call it, corporate America, your business, your finances, you're going to be buying better stuff. You're going to buy a nicer house. You're going to buy nicer cars. You're going to buy nicer watches. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But you can do it in a financially responsible way, so you can keep doing it and not lose your ass and keep having to work harder to buy more crap. Like it's amazing to be able to enjoy the best life experiences and not have to lose money about it. Like, how many of us buy houses knowing that our houses are going to be worth more in 10 years, right? So we don't cheap out on the house we want. We buy the maximum house we can afford, right? And same thing when we go on vacation, we're using points, right? Like, we use points and we're not like, oh my God, I wonder what other people will think. No, we're like, cool, I got this 5-star room for like $100 because of my points. Woohoo, I get the best experience possible. And I don't have to lose money about it. But then when we look at cars and watches, we're like, well, I'm going to lose money anyway, so why should I spend it? Well, you don't have to. You can learn the same way they condition you to think about points. You can think about watches and cars the same way. You'll condition yourself to learn that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for this interview, PJ. It's been absolutely phenomenal and very interesting and educational. Should people want to learn more about, your exotic car hacks, your watch trading academy, or any courses or the books that you have, where can they find you?
The easiest way to reach out to me is either go to pejmanghadimi.com or learnfrompj.com, regardless that you want to learn more or just get or take any of the courses. And of course, if you want to just check any of the specific communities we talked about today, we just broke down exotic car hacks and watchtradingacademy.com, which I'm sure you can link in the bio for people to get to. But the main point here is, guys, just expand your horizon and just get out there and just get educated on the topic. Even if you don't buy a Ferrari tomorrow morning, you will one day realize why you're no longer a consumer of the system. And then you'll send me a thank you card later.
Phenomenal. And I do encourage people to go follow your Instagram as well. And I'll put the link in the show notes as well, because you'll see real life testimonials from people that have followed your courses and have become success stories of themselves. But thank you very much for this time, brother. I really, really appreciate you. And until next time, everybody, this is the Chris Gethin podcast, and we are out. Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for that. That was great. That was interesting. I was making some notes here as we was carrying on.
Yeah, and if you need anything or need help with that calling in, let me know. I'm happy to help you with numbers, figures, understanding. Even if there's one you want out there, I don't have to buy you a car. Just tell me what you're looking at. I can tell you if you're making a good decision or not,
Okay, all right, perfect. Yeah, it's both the Cullinan I was looking at and like the Lexus. I like, not the Lexus, the Escalade. Mm-hmm. The newer Escalade. I don't know what you think about those.
Completely different price points. Like, yeah, sure. $500,000, the other one's like $100,000. But yeah, the Escalade is a shorter term hack, meaning you're going to have to get out of it much faster. American cars don't hold value like that. The Cullinan is going to give you at least a year and a half of driving if you buy the right one, but you can't buy it new. So
yeah, you won't be looking for like a 2019 220 or something.
Yeah, or you buy a brand new black badge under MSRP and then just basically drive that. That's a riskier proposition, but it's doable too.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I'll run that past you. I'm definitely been looking quite a lot out there. I've just, it's just been a bit of a thorn in the side, just watching the prices go up over the past year, and watching a couple of people like my friend Wes, who has definitely got the reward from that. But like you said, it's never too late to do something great.
Never. I mean, you should always go out there and figure out how to do it. Even if you don't use it immediately, learn it first, do it later.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, thank you very much, brother. I'll definitely give you, I'll hit you up and I'll let you know when this is about to go out live as well.
Sounds good. I appreciate you having me on. Okay. If you need anything, reach out anytime. Okay. Be well.
Thank you, PG. I really appreciate you, brother.
Take care. All right.
Okay, and you. And remember to go shopping for my G-Stack. Go to www.visualchemistryskin.com. Thank you ever so much for listening. My name is Chris Gethin, and I am out.